What if you awoke one morning in the high Andes, where the Inca Empire once thrived, and found yourself wondering, what was daily life really like in this mountain kingdom? The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. It rose in the early 15th century, stretching across modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, and Colombia. Its heart lay in Cusco, the imperial capital, nestled high in the mountains. Yet the empire was not only about emperors, palaces, and conquests. Beneath its grandeur lay the steady rhythm of ordinary lives of farmers, artisans, herders, soldiers, priests, and families who together made the empire function. Life in the Inca world was shaped by the mountains. The Andes, with their steep slopes, thin air, and dramatic weather, defined what people ate, how they worked, where they lived, and even how they worshipped. At altitudes that reached well over 3,000 meters, farming was difficult, yet the Inca mastered it through terraces and irrigation. The mountains were not obstacles to them, but sacred beings apus, living spirits that protected and watched over communities. From the moment a child was born in the empire, their life followed a carefully structured rhythm. Birth was celebrated with rituals, names tied to the child's destiny, and offerings to the gods. Childhood was short. By the age of 5, children began helping their parents in small tasks, and by their teens, they were expected to contribute fully to family work. Education was practical. Boys learned to farm, herd alamas, or craft tools, while girls learned to weave, cook, and manage the household. Only the sons of nobles were educated formally in Cusco, where they studied religion, governance, and the quipu system of record-keeping. The foundation of daily life was Ailu, the kinship group, or extended family community. Each Ailu shared land, labor, and resources. Members worked together in the fields, raised animals, and cared for one another. This collective model of living meant that survival was never solely an individual effort. Instead, it was woven into the community. Farming dominated the daily routine. Most Inca people were agricultural workers, rising with the sun to tend to the terraces. They grew potatoes, maize, quinoa, beans, and peppers. The potato, hardy and adaptable, became a staple crop. To preserve it, they invented chuo, a freeze-dried potato product that could last for years. Maize, though harder to cultivate at high altitudes, was prized for making chicha, a fermented drink used in rituals and festivals. Farmers worked not only their own plots, but also those of the state and the temples. This was part of the mitza system, a labor tax requiring subjects to contribute work to the empire. Through mita, vast terraces were built, roads constructed, and temples raised. Herding was equally vital. Llamas and alpacas provided wool, meat, and transport. Llamas carried goods across mountain roads, while alpacas gave soft fiber for weaving. Wool was spun into thread and dyed with natural pigments to create textiles. Textiles held immense cultural value, often more important than gold. They were markers of status, gifts to the gods, and offerings to the Sapa Inca, the emperor. Clothing reflected both practicality and hierarchy. Commoners wore simple tunics of wool or cotton, while nobles displayed elaborate designs and vivid colors. The Sapa Inca himself wore garments so sacred they were worn only once and then burned. Headdress, jewelry, and embroidery signaled rank, with feathers and fine metals reserved for the elite. Homes were modest. Most families lived in stone or adobe houses with thatched roofs, clustered into villages. Interiors were sparse, with few possessions. Cooking was done on clay hearths, meals centered on stews of potatoes, maize, or quinoa. Meat was rare, eaten mostly on special occasions. The Inca diet was simple, nutritious, and adapted to the mountains. Religion permeated all aspects of life. The Incas worshipped Inti, the sun god, as the supreme deity, believing that the emperor was his descendant. Festivals in Cusco, honored Inti with processions, music, and sacrifices. Yet worship was not limited to the sun. The earth goddess Pachamama, the moon goddess Mamakilla, and countless local deities tied to rivers, rocks, and mountains filled the spiritual landscape. Rituals ranged from offerings of coca leaves and chicha to the solemn sacrifice of llamas and, in rare cases, children during important ceremonies. These acts were believed to maintain balance between humans and the divine. The Inca calendar guided life, blending agricultural cycles with religious observances. Planting, harvesting, and festivals followed the rhythm of the seasons. The great festival of Inti Raymi, the Feast of the Sun, took place at the winter solstice, marking the sun's return and ensuring fertility for the fields. Work was balanced by communal activities and celebrations. Music, dance, and oral storytelling flourished. Instruments such as flutes, panpipes, and drums accompanied festivals, echoing through mountain valleys. Stories and myths, passed orally, preserved history and explained the world. The Inca did not develop writing as we know it, but their quipu system chords with knotted strings recorded numbers and perhaps narratives. Skilled quipucamayaks, keepers of the quipu, maintained records of population, resources, and labor obligations. 3,000 travel and communication were made possible by the Inca road system, an astonishing network of over 40,000 kilometers of roads, bridges, and stairways carved into the Andes. Along these roads ran the chasquis, relay messengers who carried quipus and messages across the empire. A chasqui could cover great distances in short time, ensuring that the emperor's commands reached even the farthest provinces. The Cepa Inca, believed to be the child of the sun, ruled with absolute authority. Nobles, administrators, and priests served beneath him, organizing the empire into provinces. Governors ensured that tribute, labor, and loyalty flowed back to Cusco. For common people, loyalty was expected, but in return, the state provided security, resources in times of famine, and monumental works that benefited all. This system of reciprocity was both practical and sacred, rooted in the Andean principle of any mutual obligation. Daily life for women held its own rhythms. Women wove textiles, prepared food, and raised children, but they also played key roles in agriculture and ritual. Some were chosen as aklas, chosen women, selected for their beauty or skill, and taken to live in temple complexes. There, they wove fine cloth, brewed chicha, and sometimes became wives of nobles or priestesses dedicated to the gods. Health and medicine were tied to both practical knowledge and spiritual belief. Inca healers used herbs, coca leaves, and minerals to treat ailments. Trepanation, the surgical removal of part of the skull, was practiced with surprising success, relieving injuries from warfare or accidents. Yet, illness was often seen as a disruption of spiritual balance, requiring ritual offerings to restore harmony. As the sun set each day, life slowed into quiet domestic rhythms. Families gathered in their simple homes, meals shared around a hearth, stories told, and prayers offered to Pachamama and Inti. The night sky, brilliant at high altitudes, was itself a sacred text. The Incas read constellations not only in stars, but in the dark patches of the Milky Way, seeing llamas, serpents, and other figures written across the heavens. This was the fabric of Inca daily life: collective labor, devotion to gods, reverence for nature, and loyalty to the empire. Though the Spanish conquest in the 16th century would unravel this world, its legacy endures in Andean culture, traditions, and the stones of Cusco and Machu Picchu. And so, as we drift softly into rest, we remember daily life in the Inca Empire was not merely survival in the mountains. It was a harmonious weaving of family, labor, faith, and nature, a tapestry that bound together millions of lives under the sun.